From AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor, this is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Here's your host, Chip Lutz.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to Laughbox. I get to talk with a pretty cool person today, Megan Werner. We're gonna talk a little bit about training your brain, which is pretty exciting because mostly, I like words that rhyme, like train your brain, insane in the membrane, which I normally am. But we're going to talk to her a little bit and find out what we can do to get that brain in check. So welcome, Megan, to Laugh.
Hello. Thank you.
So we got to meet a few years ago in Philadelphia, and we've been in a group for the Humor Academy last year, and it's been a lot of fun. But, for our listeners, you just tell us a little bit about who Megan Werner really is.
Ooh, I'm still trying to figure that out myself. That's a lifelong journey, Chip. I got involved with the ATH, and I have loved it ever since. It has really been, as Mary Kay would say, my people. But I'm a psychotherapist in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas area, and I have my own practice now called Brain Training. And I really talk about, just a lot of people are very accustomed to going to the gym and working out their bodies, and that's not so much of a big deal if your doctor tells you, hey, you do some more cardio or something, work out your heart. But when people are falling off, or if there's a death in the family or something like that, everybody's like scared of the therapist all of a sudden. So I've learned a lot over the years how to use humor and laughter in my practice.
Awesome. Now, you don't sound like you're from Arkansas.
I am. Actually, a lot of my family's from Louisiana. I was born in Louisiana and then moved to Arkansas when I was probably about 2 or 3. So I was mainly raised there.
So, okay. Well, because I would never guess you're from the South because you just don't have a twang to your voice. Not that I am not stereotyping at all.
Wait until the women in my family get together. That's a party, and we all sound extremely Southern at that time.
That is awesome. Now, my first riveting question for you, all right, is what's your favorite superhero?
Oh, man. Superhero.
You're like, I don't have any.
I know.
That has nothing to do with what I was expecting, Chip.
Dang it. We're going to call The Little Mermaid a superhero. I think my mom would be laughing right about now. Apparently I used to watch Little Mermaid every day when I was little, but I'm not a big comics fan. I don't really have a superhero, but
we'll go with Ariel.
Water.
Ariel's
yeah,
fine.
I love the water.
We can go with that. That's cool. I remember my niece, when that first came out, she loved Little Mermaid, and she'd come out and she would like do the whole, song like, and just, would sing it, and she'd be so into it. It was just like, she was the Little Mermaid in that moment. It was amazing.
Absolutely.
It was an amazing thing. So how did you get, interested in, where did it all start? You're growing up and you're like, I just want to really understand other people. How'd you become a psychotherapist?
Heck no. It definitely was a journey. It was not something I wanted to be at all when I was a kid. That's
funny. Some kids are like, you're sitting around the lunch table. Once I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to be a psychotherapist.
I think, Chip, actually deep down my subconscious was probably saying that, but it wasn't loud enough for me to hear.
Mm-hmm.
No, I loved art growing up. I was always drawing and painting and taking art classes and stuff like that. But so actually my original journey started in architecture. My aunt is an architect. Is an architect, fabulous one, based out of the Pacific Northwest, and she really inspired me, and I applied to a couple of different places. My mom kind of begged me to go in-state because at the time, I'm not sure how they rank now, but the Fay Jones School of Architecture at the University of Arkansas was ranked in the top 10 in the nation. So she was like, hey, it's in-state tuition. Why don't you just go here? Great program. So I applied. I got in somehow. So I started off in architecture, and after working in a firm after my first year, I realized it's not what I wanted to do. I loved it and I still love it, but everything was going to AutoCAD and computers, and I'm a hands-on, talk to people kind of person. So I started my sophomore year, and a couple of weeks in, I really said, no, I'm done. So I dropped my architecture classes, stayed in a couple of others, and then I just started exploring. I started taking classes in different departments, and I loved my psychology classes. And there was actually a professor who kind of became a mentor, Dr. Z. She's a big lover of positive psychology. And when she introduced me to positive psych, it was like a whole new world. It was like, yes, why are people not studying happiness and resilience and love and hope and belonging and all of these things that make us who we are as humans? So it just kind of went from there. And I finished my degree in psychology and anthropology. And then I worked in the community for a couple of years and as crisis management and case manager and psych tech, and met a couple of therapists along the way. And so I was like, well, I'll go back to school. I'll go to grad school for clinical mental health. So that's what I did.
Awesome. Yeah, because I was like, when you're talking, I was trying to see the correlation between architecture and, mental health. And all I could think of was watching Seinfeld and, George Costanza, his alter ego was Art Vandelay, and he was always an architect. It was always, I was like, all right, well, I can see the correlation there. Little George Costanza, good to go. When you first started talking, in your interests and what you do, you were talking about, helping remove some of the stigma, or people don't really like the idea of going to psychotherapy. Why is that?
So many reasons, really. I think a lot of people don't understand it. So people who come to me for the first time say, I don't get how this talk crap is going to help, and then usually after a couple of sessions they're like, oh, can I come back again? When's our next appointment? Mm-hmm. And they start to kind of see the relief and feel the relief. But so I think a lot of it is just ignorance. A lot of people don't know. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know, I think a lot of it too, people think it's feminine or cheesy, or they don't understand how the brain works. And mm-hmm. The brain is your most important organ in your body. It controls everything. So that's where I like to start too, especially with skeptics, is explaining a little bit more about the hard science and, mm-hmm. And how it functions and how your whole body is affected when something like a trauma happens.
Interesting. Yeah, I've gone to a little bit of therapy in my life, and it was fun. Helped me through some trying times. And before that, I'd never really thought of it. It was one of those things where it's like I had no place else to go, and I needed I needed some solutions. I need some help on things, and it was just like, all right, well, this was good. I'm better now. I'm not going to go on a drinking bender. Today.
That would be good. Yeah, today, maybe tomorrow.
Today. You can endure anything for 24 hours. I mean, that's the way I look at it. So what's interesting to me when you were talking about positive psychology is that I remember watching a TED Talk with Martin, Dr. Seligman, right? And he was talking about psychotherapy that for years, I mean, all they, worked on was trying to figure out what was wrong with people.
Yes.
And what I liked about in that TED Talk was on how, the shift in positive psychology, I mean, that's not what you're trying to do. I really like that. And I like the fact that, that resonated with you as well. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about training your brain. I like that, because sometimes I think that I just wish I had two brains, because sometimes I think, I'm really not really smart enough to understand this. I wish I had another brain that was bigger that would help me get this whole picture. So I'm always interested in how to, work that organ, make it a little bit better. So, when you talk about training your brain, I mean, what are we really hitting on?
Gosh, lots of things. And it depends on what you're coming in for, really. I like to say I work with anything from depression to possession. So if you're coming in for, just you're in a slump, you can't seem to get motivated, I mean, that might look a little bit different than somebody who's had some serious trauma, especially with what's going on in our nation. There's been a lot of women and men who I have found, just in a local community, who are starting to come forward and kind of recognize that they did go through some kind of sexual trauma or something, years ago. And so I've had several new clients for that reason. So, I mean, the path I would take, with them looks different than somebody who's not experienced something so devastating. So, gosh, that could be like a 2-hour conversation. how to treat that, and how to train your brain. It's recognizing thoughts, behaviors. Essentially, I guess if you put it in a nutshell, you are bringing awareness to your subconscious, because when things happen to you, sometimes they're buried deep in your subconscious. And, there's some research that suggests that at any given point, there's about 95% of your mind, your brain is your subconscious, and only 5% is your conscience.
Shut up.
Yeah. So I'm serious. So a lot of people think it's the other way around. They're like, oh yeah, I got it all under control. Guarantee you don't, because I know I don't have it all under control sometimes. Sometimes it slips up on me, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh God, I need to go back to my therapist for a second. Or practice some things, that have fallen out. But so a lot of that is teasing it out of your subconscious, recognizing, bring awareness, exploring areas, behaviors, thoughts, emotions, triggers, and then once you can explore those, you understand them. Once you can understand them, then you can take action and change.
Interesting. I would have been on the opposite side. Like you said, I would have been thinking that only 5% is my subconscious. So because I feel like I'm pretty self-aware. I know what's going on in my, but like you said, I do have some hair triggers. Like there are a lot of times we'll do a little therapy on me right now. Okay. So there are a lot of times when I'm not a joiner, which is amazing. I was in the Navy for 22 years because I hate taking orders, and I'm not a joiner. And, I sit back and I think about that a lot, as far as like, why don't I join? Why don't I, like I'm in a big group, I'm not, I don't really like being in there. And I really sit back and think about that. And, as far as, why don't I do this? Is it because of, like back in high school? What is it? I mean, anyway, I'm going on a tangent, and that's no place here. Anyway, so what are some, like tools you give people to help them train their brain? Like, it's got to be more just than just thinking positive. I mean, what are some like the things that you can do to help bring that that positive part out, the positive psychology, the hope, the resilience, and so forth?
Sure. So it's a pretty well layered process. I mean, kind of going back to what you were saying about Martin Seligman, one of the things that stuck with me about something he said in the past to explain positive psychology, because it's not all about fluffy bunnies. So he said, traditional psychotherapy would kind of repair the deficit. So if your baseline is 0, you go in because you're experiencing some kind of depression, it's -5. So a lot of psychotherapy would say, I'm going to take you from -5 back to 0. Positive psychology takes you from -5 to +5. Mm-hmm. So you're repairing, the deficit or whatever happened, but you're also improving the client so that they don't have to go back to psychotherapy as much. They can learn how to be a little bit more resilient, more hopeful, and deal with things on their own. So I always laugh and say, hey, if I ran out of, clients one day, that would be awesome. If I taught everybody you
can always go back to architecture.
Yeah, there you go. Do that as my encore career. So I don't know, kind of getting into the humor and laughter stuff. I've learned how to take a lot of improv things that I've learned, and also just being creative, and combine that with some traditional psychotherapy techniques. Mm-hmm. So I love improv, especially in session, because it kind of helps with that teasing out the subconscious, what I was talking about earlier. There's one of my favorites. I call the Luther process. Are you familiar with Key and Peele?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And for our listeners, Key and Peele is a show on Comedy Central and on YouTube. Yeah. Google it. It'll come up. You'll spend hours laughing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I love those too. So Key and Peele, my favorite skit, and I watch these over and over, and I crack up, is the Obama translator, Luther. So that kind of came out years ago when everybody was criticizing Obama that he doesn't get angry and he's not passionate and he's not, dealing with things as he should. Mm-hmm. So they started making these skits with Luther, who would just fly off the handle and, cussing left and right and saying what everybody thought Obama should be saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then some. So I like to do that in session when the time is right. I'm not just going to throw something out there for a client to do. But
not the first session. It's like, hey, we're going to do something completely new.
Good judgment is paramount. Good judgment. No, but it's one of my favorites because so essentially, you have the client kind of give you a couple of statements, things that are really stressing them out, but leave it bland. And I would say those comments, and so it's kind of like a role play.
Mm-hmm.
And the client would play Luther. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, we're in these four walls. It's confidential. Like, say whatever you need to say about this topic, and don't hold back. Don't pay attention to that little filter in your head, your Jiminy Cricket, whatever it is. You're not saying, oh, we can't see this, we can't do this, we can't do this. No. Yeah. So throw that out the window and be Luther. And a lot of times I would show a clip first of that skit if they weren't familiar with Luther and the Obama translator and that kind of thing. Uh-huh. This is how I want you to be. And a lot of times when clients really engage in that process and say, well, you know what? Yeah, screw this. And I'm so angry that this happened and blah, blah, blah. And why is this person, da, 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 da. At the end of it, they're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. And then you can kind of pick out some of the things. So I'll shed light on some things that they've never said before, never thought, hey, do you really feel this way? You know what? I think I do. And so that's all part of the exploration process and understanding and teasing things out.
How cool is that? I mean, using an improv exercise to, get things out. Because sometimes for me, I'll hold things in way too long. Yeah. And then when I go to talk about them, with whoever, or the person is, in my head, I'm saying, all right, Chip, when you go to say this, don't be an ass, don't be an ass, don't be an ass. But then when I open my mouth up, I'm like a huge ass because I held on to it way too long.
Yeah.
So, going through an exercise like that certainly would be a little more helpful just to, let go of some of that stress ahead of time, some of that pent up anger, and the voices in your head, where sometimes they're worse. They're worse than anything, aren't they?
They are.
Especially when they're dealing with somebody that's, in your life. Oh, they did this because of this, and I know it's because of this, and it's this and this and this and this and this, and it's like you just keep, going over it and over it in your head, and you're just like, oh man, I just want to kick a cat. So,
and sometimes people say that, especially in the moment. And usually by the time we're doing a Luther exercise or something, most of my clients know by now that I certainly don't judge at all. So if they need to say stuff like that, I just want to wring the cat's neck, or my husband or my wife or my, whatever it is, usually we're kind of laughing about it. And, ooh, glad you got that out.
That's awesome. What a great application of that. I was imagining that, just them being able to get it out and maybe laughing about it is one of those things that helps give you a little more control over whatever the situation is.
Certainly. And the benefits of humor and laughter.
No, I don't know any. That's why I'm talking to you. That's why I am talking to you. Absolutely.
Well, for those people who, especially when it comes to therapy, just the ability to laugh, especially in a session, I mean, it really does improve your cognitive flexibility. So it helps you to go deeper as well, for people who are really kind of clammed up and they finally make it to therapy and then they're like, oh, I want to talk about this issue, but I kind of don't. And most of them, they still have walls up. When you can start to laugh and ease up and relax, it really does help explore the areas of the subconscious a little bit better.
Awesome. So that's the things that you do in sessions, but what are some of the things like you have people practice when they're awake? So when I think about, I won't say when I think about psychotherapy or going to therapy, I think about the movie What About Bob, but it always comes to mind because it's one of my favorite movies. Baby steps, Bob, baby steps. And he goes all the way to his therapist's house with his little jar. He's like, look, I'm taking baby steps. I mean, he gave us some tools to use afterwards, but certainly Richard Dreyfuss wasn't expecting Bill Murray to show up at his front door. So what are some that, some tools that people can practice to, help them, in that realm that you say, like, hey, these are some things you should do.
Yeah. So when it comes to like the positive psychology thing, sometimes we'll get into gratitude journals, letters, and writing. And then sometimes I'll throw a humor twist on it. Sometimes I'll have people, right, if they're really clammed up and have no connection with their own emotions, or they're just kind of all over the place, but a lot of times by the time people make it to therapy, they're so anxious and emotional that it's almost like a loose cannon all the time. It's just like flooding out like a volcano that doesn't stop. So sometimes I'll have them go home and write out a comedy stand-up of their lives. And we talk about how
take my wife, please.
we talk a lot about how, you look at the material that comedians use, and 9 times out of 10, it's very personal and very vulnerable and real events that they've experienced, and they're using it in such a way that it, for whatever their purpose is. There's a lot of different reasons comedians do it, but they add humor and laughter to it, makes it easier to accept, and yada yada. But sometimes I like to throw in those elements. Here's your homework assignment. Go home, write about your life, but as a stand-up routine, and just see what happens. Because also, I don't want them to do anything too deep without me there, because I don't want them to kind of be triggered and go into a panic attack or some kind of trauma. Too much exposure while I'm not there to help guide them through it. So we do a lot in session, so that if something does come up that's too much, I can kind of help them out of it. But so the comedy stand-up stuff, some of the things that we do at home. I also like doing Alan Klein's joke jitsu. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
I have, I can't remember which book it is, but I have a couple of Alan Klein's books, and in one of them he talks about joke jitsu, and it's I wish I had some examples in front of me, because they're hilarious, the ones that my clients come up with. But it's saying, oh gosh, I'm totally having a brain fart. I'm gonna have to find it on my shelf. I've got a lot of books in here. Like something. What's the? Oh shoot! You recognize something that's terrible in your life, but then you kind of one up it with something that's funny, like. I'm totally blanking on it. You're not familiar with anything that I'm saying? I'm rambling.
You're not familiar with anything I'm saying, Chip. You're a terrible host.
I need some more coffee.
Well, but
I'll come back to that one.
But I would think that that's almost like an improv thing of yes anding. That this is true. If this is true, what else can be true? It is one of the things where you're like building onto it. So it's maybe so, and I'm just guessing what it would be, that would be so obscure.
Oh, good news, bad news.
Yeah, that it can't be anything but, funny after that, so.
Yeah. I remembered. It's good news, bad news. That's what it is.
Good news, bad news.
It's like, bad news is I just failed my drug screen for weed. Good news is I didn't fail it for meth.
That's good.
So you kind of, you one up it with something that didn't happen that could have been worse, and you laugh about it.
Or like, bad news is my wife is divorcing me. Good news is I don't have to buy her a birthday present.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
That's kind of like a different, take on, like kind of reframing the situation a little bit, but, being able to look at it as the opposite and get a completely different perspective. That would, that definitely make me laugh. So, because I can think of some highly inappropriate ones right now that I'm not going to say on the podcast, but they would be hilarious. Great. Yeah. Those are some good strategies. I would be able to use, going back to your first one, on, looking at your life as a stand-up routine. Just some of life. Some things are like semi-horrific, but you can also sometimes find the humor in it if you just sit back and almost as an observer and look at it. Because real life is unintentionally funny.
It is.
It just, some of the things are just so crazy. Like last night I was speaking locally, and whenever I go to speak, it's a small room, there's like 40 people. I always go talk to people at the back tables, because I figure, well, it helps me take the edge off, because I figure people are sitting at the back tables for a reason. They don't want to be there or whatever. So I'm back there talking to these two guys at this back table, and I'm talking to them, or I'm just getting to know them a little bit. And, the subject of my podcast came up, and, it's like, oh, you got a podcast? And I was telling them about it. Yeah. And the other guy said, well, yeah, it's on this website. And I was like, this is what I said to him. I said, you've been on my website? He goes, well, yeah. I used to take, I was your student for 3 different classes, in grad school. He took 3 of my classes in grad school, right? And I did not recognize him. It was not like it was one class, right? It was 3. Yeah. It was 3 after 3 classes. I mean, we should have been going out for beers together, right? So I didn't even remember him. I like, and I laughed it off. I was like, oh, wow, I feel like a real a-hole. And so we kind of
he probably named his firstborn after you, Chip.
I don't know. It could have been. That would have been a way to yes and it, right? But it was just one of those things that it was just funny to me afterwards. I was like, only me. I'm there. I pick out the 2 people in the room that just to take the edge off and, network a little bit and talk to people. And I pick somebody that I should have known.
Nice. Insert foot into mouth.
Yeah. But yeah, like real life is unintentionally funny. So that's a great strategy to kind of, look at your life almost as a third person, from the outside and see what you can, see what you can see. Sure. So you mentioned earlier about a gratitude journal. Does that mean it's something that it's like a daily thing? I mean, because like I tried that once and I ran out of things like within a day.
Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to do it. Some people gratitude journal and it's paragraphs, in each journal entry. One of the things I like to do, and this is actually research based, is that you want to write down 3 good things that have happened to you in the last 24 hours. And it's not enough to just think it in your head. It's much better to write it down. And some of the research suggests that it's even by doing this, 3-4 times a week, that it's just as powerful as an antidepressant. So that being said, I'm not saying don't get off your meds if you're on an antidepressant, but at the end of the day,
I'm glad how you put that clarification in there. That
clarify
the disclaimer, because you want to keep your license, right?
Listen to your doctor. Anyway, no, it's just, it produces some good emotion, and then especially right before you go to bed, it helps you relax and that kind of thing. But a lot of times people will say, nothing good has happened to me in the last 24 hours. I'm like, okay, well, let's break it down a little bit. So, have you gone to the bathroom today? Yeah. Did you enjoy it? What do you mean? Did you feel relief after you went to the bathroom? Well, yeah, I felt relief. Well, okay, there's one good thing. Write it down. Sometimes you have to really get down to the little bones of it, because so many times we have thousands of good things that happen to us throughout the day, but when that one bad thing happens, it suddenly defines the 24 hours as negative, and so take that out of the picture and kind of refocus, look at all of the other things. Well, I got to sleep in 5 extra minutes this morning, or hey, I took a great shower this morning, or hey, I got to help some elderly lady take groceries to her car, and that made me feel good, and it was good for her. It doesn't have to be huge and astronomical. It can be something as small as I enjoyed the go.
Yeah, going to the bathroom, absolutely. Which I actually text my brother about every day. It's a guy thing, so.
It's also a girl thing too. It's okay.
Well, I did not know that. I did not know that. See, now
I have a friend who always calls me when she's going to the bathroom. She's like, I don't know what it is. I just always think of you.
That's funny.
Well, that's great.
What I love is when I'm in the airport and people are on their cell phones in a stall and they're talking to somebody, because I always want to just yell, "He's taking a crap!"
Or get out your whoopee cushion and add some sound effects.
That would be great. See, that would be something, if I actually did that, I'd be grateful for, because it would be hilarious to me. Because then I would run down the hallway just laughing. I would laugh about it all day. Because I don't know what we did, in the bathroom before cell phones. I mean, this must have been really, I don't remember it that time. It just must have been really bad. But It makes you not want to use anybody's cell phone. I'm just saying.
God, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the bacteria count is on mine, but I'm sure
I constantly wipe mine down with Clorox wipes. I'm constantly wiping down.
That says a lot about you, that you use it a lot in the bathroom. So that's great.
Well, I also have 2 small kids, Chip.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I bleach and Clorox everything.
Yeah, they are just like, the children are like Petri dishes.
They are. My mom was actually just saying last night, she was there and I was scrubbing the kids in the tub, and she was like, "Man, you really scrub them." I'm like, "Well, the flu is going around and one's 3 and one's 1." I mean, yeah, it's a petri dish all the time. They're going to get scrubbed from head to toe every evening.
Your mom's like, "I think the Brillo pad was a little bit much."
Yeah. Right.
That's hilarious. All right. Well, what's one, if I couldn't go to therapy, I was too busy, or, maybe my insurance didn't cover it, whatever, I couldn't make it there. I mean, what's one thing that you would tell me is like, maybe I'm going through like a lull in my life. What's one thing that you would tell me that, hey, why don't you just, try doing this for a while? I mean, obviously the gratitude journal and things we talked about, but, you have any other ones that like, hey, this is something you can do, train your brain, help you do things a little bit different?
Sure. Really monitor, be more self-aware about what you watch and pay attention to. And this is something I do daily, and I do more and more as the years go by, but I really monitor the news, how much I am watching the news, how much I'm listening to things, because yes, the news is informative, but you don't have to watch it all day long. It is horrible. They're always talking about tragedies in the world. Mm-hmm. I love to catch Ellen every once in a while. I love to record it. Sometimes I'll put that on in the evenings instead of the news because it's funny and it's a little more lighthearted. I like to listen to Elvis Duran in the morning show. Elvis Duran in the morning show. That helps. So pay attention to what you're doing. And if you notice yourself reading, obituaries or just, op-eds, or always responding to people's political Facebook feeds, don't. Right. Don't do that. It's not worth your time, and it's not worth your emotional discourse either. So it's, pay attention to what you do, and try and inject humor. I always ask people who their favorite comedian is, usually on the first session. Hey, who's your favorite comedian? And it lets me know what kind of comedy they enjoy, what appeals to them. And sometimes I'll use that later on, in later sessions. But watch more. If you love Kevin Hart, watch more Kevin Hart. Do that before bed. If you start to feel really stressed out, take a humor break. A lot of women love Pinterest. So get on Pinterest, go to the humor section, take 5 minutes. Do it on your phone in the bathroom for all I care. I don't know. Just try to inject those little moments of positivity with humor throughout the day, and especially when you're stressed.
That's awesome. Now, what would be cool is if you developed a tool that you could tell exactly, what somebody needed from the comedian that they liked. Like, oh, this person likes Kevin Hart. This is their personality profile. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah, that would be really cool.
Because then, like, I would tell you, like, well, I really like Will Ferrell movies, and you'd automatically assume, like, well, Chip is a functional idiot. Or semi-functional, whatever. Yeah. But that's my go-to. I mean, I could watch Old School 100 times. It's just like, it doesn't make any difference, because it's like one of those things that I like. And, it's a good thing to think about as far as what you're kind of putting in, feeding your brain with during the course of the day, that if you're already in a slump and you're watching, more stuff, you're just going to focus more in on the negative, or you're getting into that Facebook feed and you're perpetuating more negative feelings or, anger because, somebody isn't agreeing with you. Yeah. I agree with that completely. As a matter of fact, if things get heated on my Facebook feed, I just, I just unfriend those people or don't follow them. Like my one, I have 4 brothers. One of my brothers, we are completely opposite, and so I've unfriended him like 5 times. Matter of fact, it was funny because it was a couple months ago. We were talking on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, I tried to tag you something on Facebook. Did you unfriend me again?"
No, it's the cat.
No, it must have been some kind of mistake. I don't know what happened there.
Conspiracy.
Well, it has been a lot of fun talking today. I know the listeners will get some good tools they can use to kind of perpetuate a little more positivity in their lives, train their brains a little bit more. I always like to end with something a little bit funny. So I know I asked you at the beginning before we started recording what your favorite joke was.
Oh gosh!
So I'm gonna ask you to tell that one because it's so awesome. The one that your mom used to tell you, because it's a classic.
It's so terrible too, and I don't know why I crack up. All right, here it is again. Why did the cow not produce milk?
I don't know, Megan. Why did the cow not produce milk?
because it was a milk dud.
Oh, that is awesome. So classic, so hilarious.
So cheesy.
Well, no, see, but yeah, I love I love all the cheesy ones. So that it's a good one with me. Now, if after today people want to find you, where do they go?
Ooh, a couple of different places. So my website is trainthisbrain.org. You can go there. You can also find me on Psychology Today if you are local, Northwest Arkansas, and need some therapy services. You can definitely go there. But trainthisbrain.org works, or Meg Werner at trainthisbrain.org. It's my email.
Okay. Can they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yes, they can.
Okay, beautiful. Because I know that we're connected. I just want to make sure that somebody were like, oh man, I want to connect with Megan on LinkedIn, see everything that she's doing, stalk her secretly.
Yeah.
That you'd be
That's not cool.
Well,
no stalking.
Thank you for spending time with me today. I certainly appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much, Chip. I enjoyed it.
This is Laughbox, the podcast for laughter and humor professionals. Laughbox is made possible by a grant from the National Speakers Foundation and is brought to you by AATH, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. Find out more at aath.org. Be sure to review Laughbox on iTunes. For show notes and more information about today's conversation, visit laughbox.aath.org.